My name is Arden Locke, and I was 29 years old when my husband refused to sign our newborn son's birth certificate. Not because he doubted the baby was his. Not because there had been a mistake. Because our son had been born 11 weeks early, weighing 2 pounds and 6 ounces, and the NICU nurse had just told us he might need oxygen support, feeding tubes, specialist appointments, and a hospital stay that could cost more than $173,000 before insurance decided what it would cover. Wesley stood beside my hospital bed in his pressed blue shirt, looked through the glass at the incubator where our son was fighting to breathe, and said, "I am not putting my name on a problem that could ruin everything." Then he walked out with his mother. The birth certificate worksheet stayed on the rolling table beside me. Father information, blank. Signature, blank. A nurse named Della quietly placed a yellow copy in my discharge folder and said, "Keep every paper, honey. Some blanks are not accidents." 9 years later, Wesley came back wearing a charcoal suit, a campaign smile, and a hospital foundation pin. He needed my son's name, photo, and survival story attached to a $950,000 pediatric donor pledge. He needed to look like a family man for the Northlake Children's Health Council. He needed Jonah Locke, the child he called a financial disaster, to stand beside him on a stage. But the birth certificate still had one empty space. And when Wesley asked me to let him fix it, I opened the folder he left behind 9 years earlier and said, "You left that line blank. I left it honest." Before I tell you what happened in that foundation boardroom, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If someone has ever abandoned you during the hardest moment and returned when your strength looked useful, this story is for you. Tell me what you would have done with that blank line, and subscribe if quiet proof is the kind of truth you understand. I grew up in Northlake, Wisconsin, a city with cold winters, pretty riverwalks, and neighborhoods where people smiled at fundraisers while keeping private cruelty folded neatly under their coats. My father had died when I was 16, and my mother worked 2 jobs until her knees made her stop. That meant I learned early what bills looked like when they arrived before mercy. We were not poor in the romantic way people describe later. We were tired. We were careful. We were the kind of family that put $5 of gas in the car and prayed the needle understood math. By the time I met Wesley Vance, I had spent most of my life becoming the dependable person in every room. I worked as a medical billing appeals specialist for a regional insurance advocacy nonprofit. My job was to help families challenge denied claims, correct hospital coding errors, apply for charity care, and understand bills that arrived like threats. I had seen mothers cry over oxygen invoices. I had seen fathers sell trucks for chemo copays. I had seen hospitals make mistakes and families blame themselves because the statement looked official. Paper did not scare me. That was one of the reasons Wesley said he loved me. He said I made hard things understandable. At 26, I believed that was romance. Now I know people often admire your strength before they start spending it. Wesley was 30 when we met at a community health fundraiser at the Northlake Arts Hall. He worked in development for a hospital network, the kind of job where charm wore a name tag and every sentence seemed polished by committee. He was handsome in a clean, expensive way, with dark hair, careful shoes, and a laugh that made older donors touch his arm. His family was known in Northlake. His father had been a city councilman. His mother, Vivian Vance, chaired committees, hosted luncheons, and had never met a room she did not believe she should arrange. Vivian was not warm, but she was skilled at sounding warm. "Arden," she said the first time Wesley brought me to dinner, "Wes tells us you work with medical bills. That must be very grounded work." Grounded. She said it like humble with gloves on. Wesley's younger brother, Miles, was the golden son in the public way, a former college swimmer with a finance job and a wife who wore beige like a profession. Wesley was the emotional golden son, the one Vivian trusted to make the family look compassionate without giving up control. He could speak at a hospital gala about community care and then ignore a valet struggling with crutches. Vivian did not see the contradiction. She called it focus. I did see it sometimes. I just explained it away. Love is very good at filing red flags under context. Wesley and I moved fast. He liked that I had my own apartment, my own salary, my own practical habits. He said he was tired of women who wanted to be rescued. He said I was the first person who felt like a partner. When his rent increased and he was between promotion cycles, I let him move in with me for 6 months. When he needed to pay off an old credit card before applying for a mortgage, I helped him consolidate it. When his mother hosted a donor dinner and needed someone to fix the seating chart because the hospital president's ex-wife could not sit near his new girlfriend, I fixed it at midnight while Wesley kissed my forehead and called me brilliant. Useful women are often called brilliant until they ask why they are working for free. We had a church wedding 2 years after we met. Small, elegant, paid for mostly by me and my mother, though Vivian told everyone she had handled the florals. The courthouse paperwork was supposed to be filed the following week. Wesley said his assistant mailed it. I believed him. 6 months later, when I needed a certified copy for my insurance enrollment, I found out the county had no marriage license on file. Wesley looked genuinely embarrassed. "That's insane," he said. "I'll fix it." Then his father got sick. Then Vivian needed help. Then Wesley changed jobs. Then we were trying for a baby. Then the missing license became one more piece of paper I was told not to make emotional. "We are married in every way that matters," Wesley said. I wanted that to be true. So I let it be true longer than I should have. That is why the birth certificate mattered later. Legally, the hospital needed him to complete and sign the parentage acknowledgement if he wanted his name on Jonah's certificate. Emotionally, he had already stood in front of our families, promised forever, taken my savings, slept beside me, called my mother Mom, and let the whole town call me his wife. He was my husband, where it gave him comfort. He became paperwork shy when our son became expensive. Pregnancy changed everything slowly, then all at once. At first, Wesley was charming about it. He posted a photo of our tiny ultrasound on his private story with the caption "Future Vance Legacy." Vivian sent a silver rattle engraved with baby V. Wesley talked about college funds and baseball gloves and donor picnics, where our child would run across the lawn, while board members said how beautiful our family was. Then the complications began. At 23 weeks, my blood pressure rose. At 25 weeks, my ankles swelled so badly my shoes left marks. At 27 weeks, my doctor said the word preeclampsia, and Wesley's expression shifted from concern to calculation. "How serious is this?" he asked in the exam room. Dr. Han looked at him. "Serious enough that we monitor closely. Our goal is to keep mother and baby safe as long as possible." "But if the baby comes early," Wesley said, "what kind of cost are we talking about?" The room went quiet. Dr. Han answered medically first. NICU care, respiratory support, feeding assistance, long-term follow-up. Then she said the financial counselor could speak with us if needed. Wesley nodded like a man in a meeting. I sat on the exam table, paper sheet under my thighs, one hand on my stomach, and watched my almost husband ask about cost before he asked whether our son might live. That was the first crack I could not decorate. By 29 weeks, I was admitted to Northlake Regional Medical Center. The room had pale green walls, a narrow window, and a monitor that turned every heartbeat into sound. Nurses came and went. My mother sat beside me knitting small blue hats she pretended were not emergency prayers. Wesley visited between work calls. Vivian came once, looked at the hospital gown folded over my belly, and said, "You poor thing, this is not how anyone imagined a first baby." No, I thought. The baby did not choose the lighting. Jonah was born at 3:18 a.m. on a Tuesday, after a delivery that felt like my body was being asked to surrender and fight at the same time. I heard one tiny sound, then motion. Doctors, nurses, a plastic warmer, a mask, someone saying 2 pounds 6, someone saying oxygen, someone saying NICU team. I did not hold him. They let me see him for 3 seconds before they took him down the hall, bundled in wires and urgency. Wesley stood beside the bed looking pale. Go with him, I whispered. He did not move. Wesley, go. He looked at the blood pressure cuff on my arm, the nurse pressing on my stomach, the door where our son had disappeared. Your mom can go, he said. My mother went. That should have told me enough. The next morning, Della came in with the birth certificate worksheet. She was a tall nurse with kind eyes, tight silver curls, and the kind of calm that made panic feel less lonely. She explained the forms gently. Mother's information, baby's name, parentage acknowledgement if father wanted to be listed, social security request, hospital keeps copies, state processes later. I wrote Jonah Ellis Locke. Jonah because I had loved the name since childhood. Ellis after my father. Locke because it was mine, and in that moment, mine was the only name standing still. Wesley entered while Della was explaining the father section. He had not been to the NICU yet that morning. Vivian was behind him, carrying a coffee tray and wearing pearls at 8 a.m. in a hospital. Della smiled politely. Mr. Vance, if you would like to be listed, we can complete this acknowledgement today. Wesley looked at the paper, then at me. Can we do this later? Della said, you can complete parentage forms later through the state, but the birth record will be filed with the information provided at discharge. Vivian stepped closer. There is no rush, is there? The baby is fragile. We should not make permanent decisions during trauma. I stared at her. His name is Jonah. He is not a trauma. Wesley rubbed his forehead. Arden, don't start. Della's eyes moved between us. I said, sign the form. Wesley lowered his voice. We need to talk about what this means. It means you are his father. It means my name becomes legally attached to whatever happens next. Medical debt, insurance issues, decisions, everything. My chest hurt, and not from surgery because I had not had surgery. From breath trying to move through disbelief. Whatever happens next is our son. Vivian placed the coffee tray on the counter. Arden, Wesley has responsibilities. He cannot be careless because everyone is emotional. Della said quietly, I can come back. No, I said, stay. That word surprised all of us. Wesley looked embarrassed now, which made him meaner. You do not understand what this could do to my career. If the hospital thinks I cannot manage my own family crisis, if donors hear I am drowning in NICU bills. Drowning, I whispered. Our son is trying to breathe. He looked toward the door. I am not putting my name on a problem that could ruin everything. The room went silent. Even Vivian stopped moving. Della's face changed in the smallest way, professional still, but human. I said, say that again. Wesley picked up his coat from the chair. No, I'm not doing this while you are like this. Like what? Hysterical. I was lying in a hospital bed with my premature son behind glass, asking his father to sign a form. Hysterical was the word he chose because truthful would have made him responsible. He left. Vivian followed him after giving me a look I still remember. Not pity, resentment. As if I had inconvenienced her family by making their abandonment visible. Della waited until the door closed. Then she came beside the bed and lowered the rail. Do you want to complete your portion now? I could not speak. She handed me a tissue. My hand shook so badly, she steadied the clipboard while I signed my name. Can I leave it blank? I asked. Yes, if he does not complete it, that section remains blank unless amended later through the proper process. Leave it blank, she nodded. Then she placed the yellow copy in my discharge folder. Keep every paper, honey. Some blanks are not accidents. I did not understand then that she had just given me a survival instruction. Jonah spent 57 days in the NICU. 57 days of alarms, hand sanitizer, tiny diapers, whispered prayers, and learning that motherhood can begin without being able to lift your child from a box. I learned his numbers before I learned the shape of his cry. Oxygen saturation, heart rate, milliliters, weight in grams, bilirubin levels, apnea spells, feeding tolerance. I learned which nurses hummed, which doctors explained, which parents stared through glass like me because hope felt too heavy to hold alone. Wesley came twice. The first time, on day 6, he stood outside the NICU pod for 7 minutes and said the machines made him anxious. The second time, on day 19, he came with Vivian, took one photo through the glass, then asked whether I had spoken to billing. I had. The hospital's initial charges were terrifying, as NICU charges often are before insurance adjustments, charity care, coding review, and payment plans. I understood that. This was my work. The first estimated statement showed $173,680 in billed charges to date, not final patient responsibility. I explained that to Wesley. He heard only the number. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said. I looked at our son, wearing a cap smaller than my palm. "He is alive." Wesley said, "You keep saying that like it pays the bill." A nurse glanced over. I did not answer because if I started, the NICU would not be quiet anymore. That evening, he texted, "I need space. Do not contact my office. My mother will coordinate anything necessary." I wrote back, "Coordinate your son." He did not reply. A week later, Vivian mailed me a folder. Inside was a typed letter saying Wesley was under severe emotional strain, that he did not consent to being listed as Jonah's father at this time, that he disputed any financial responsibility until paternity was appropriately established, and that all communication should go through her attorney. There was no attorney letterhead, just Vivian's monogrammed stationery and a threat wearing perfume. I put it in the discharge folder with the birth certificate copy. My mother moved into my apartment before Jonah came home. She was 61 then, diabetic, stubborn, and still working part-time at a school cafeteria because she said retirement was for women whose knees had better unions. She slept on my sofa, washed pump parts, argued with insurance representatives when my voice gave out, and taped a sign above the sink that said, "Eat something before you fight everybody." "He's gone," she told me one night while I sat at the kitchen table with claim forms. "I know." "No, baby, you know it in your head. I need you to know it in your calendar. Stop leaving room for him to come by tomorrow." That hurt. Because I had been leaving room. Not in my words, in small things. I kept Wesley's mug in the cabinet. I kept one drawer with his socks. I left the father section blank in Jonah's baby book for weeks because writing none felt like stabbing a future that had already bled. Then Jonah came home on oxygen. A tiny tube under his nose, a monitor by his bassinet, follow-up appointments with pulmonology, ophthalmology, cardiology, developmental therapy. My apartment became a supply closet with a baby in the middle of it. There is no room for fantasy when a newborn's oxygen alarm goes off at 2:13 in the morning. There is only motion, check the tube, check the color. Call the nurse line, breathe, breathe again. Wesley did not come. He did not come when Jonah went back to the hospital for RSV at 4 months. He did not come when Jonah had feeding therapy at 8 months. He did not come when Jonah took his first steps at 19 months, wobbly and furious. He did not come when I filed for a parentage order and support through the county. He fought it for 7 months, then finally submitted to testing after the judge ordered it. The test said what everyone knew. Wesley Vance was Jonah's biological father. The court ordered child support. Wesley paid late, then through wage withholding, then regularly once his lawyer explained that public contempt proceedings were not good for a man building a hospital development career. But he never amended the birth certificate. I could have pushed harder legally, I know that. People ask that part when they hear the story. Why didn't you make him? Why leave it blank? Why let him get away with that visible absence? Because at first, I was exhausted. Then I was focused on survival. Then slowly, I realized the blank was not an emptiness I had to fix. It was a record, and records matter. Jonah grew, not easily. Beautifully, but not easily. He had asthma triggered by cold air and viruses. He had scars from tape on skin too fragile for tape. He had glasses by age 3 because prematurity had left its fingerprints on his eyes. He hated loud hand dryers, loved trains, and believed bananas tasted better if cut into circles, but sandwiches tasted better as triangles. He was gentle in a way that did not make him weak. At 4, he patted a crying toddler at therapy and said, "The mask is scary, but then air comes." At 5, he asked why some kids had dads at preschool breakfast, and he had Nana. I told him, families can be shaped different ways. Yours has me, Nana, Dr. Han, Mr. Omar next door, and a lot of people who love you. He thought about that, but no dad. I did not lie. Your dad was not ready to be kind. Jonah nodded like that made a sad kind of sense. Maybe he needs therapy, maybe. Can I have cereal? Children can move from heartbreak to cereal in one breath. It is one of their mercies. When Jonah was 6, Northlake Regional asked if we would speak at a small NICU family event, not a gala, a reunion picnic in the hospital courtyard. Della still worked there. Dr. Han hugged me. Jonah wore a blue shirt with dinosaurs and stood beside a display board of babies who had once fit in adult hands. I did not want to speak at first. I was not inspirational, I was tired. I still had a payment plan. I still worked full-time. I still woke at night if Jonah coughed too hard. But Della said, people do not need polished, they need possible. So I spoke. I told the parents that fear did not make them weak. I told them to keep copies of every bill, appeal every denial that looked wrong, ask for itemized statements, request social work, and let people bring food even if their kitchen was messy. Jonah stood beside me, holding a toy ambulance. At the end, he took the microphone without warning and said, "When I was a baby, I had a machine that helped me breathe, but now I can run almost all the way to the red bench." Everyone laughed and cried at the same time. That was how Bright Harbor Kids Foundation FO. Und us. Bright Harbor was a nonprofit connected to Northlake Regional's pediatric outreach programs. They raised money for NICU family lodging, medical equipment, transportation vouchers, therapy scholarships, and billing navigation for families who fell between too much income for assistance and not enough money to survive a medical crisis. The foundation director, Sienna Brooks, asked if Jonah and I would consider becoming part of their family ambassador program. I asked for the forms. She smiled. I had a feeling you would. I read every consent clause: photo use, story use, event appearances, child assent, right to withdraw, no medical details beyond what I approved, no donor meetings without notice, no use in political campaigns, no parent not listed on the consent form could authorize anything. Sienna did not rush me. That is why I trusted her. Jonah wanted to do it because he liked the foundation's therapy dog, Basil, and because he understood, in a child's way, that the money helped babies who needed air. For the next 3 years, we attended small events. Jonah drew pictures for NICU families. He recorded a short thank you video for donors when he was 7, missing one front tooth and reading from a card he had decorated with rocket ships. He helped open a family resource room with donated recliners and phone chargers. He became known in Northlake as one of Bright Harbor's miracle kids, though I hated that word. Miracle made it sound like the machines, nurses, doctors, billing appeals, sleepless nights, and stubborn child had been decorative. Jonah was not a miracle because survival was magical. He was a miracle because survival had cost so much, and he was still kind. Wesley saw him publicly before he saw him privately. That was important. He did not reach out after Jonah's first foundation video. He did not call after the local paper wrote about the NICU reunion. He did not send a birthday card when Jonah's picture appeared on Bright Harbor's annual report. Then Wesley's career changed. Northlake Regional merged with a larger hospital network. A new philanthropic council was created to attract major donors, shape community grants, and oversee pediatric partnership campaigns. The Northlake Children's Health Council was prestigious, visible, and exactly the kind of board Wesley had spent years positioning himself to join. He had the resume. He had the donors. He had the suit. But he had a problem. His image had become too polished and not warm enough. That is how Sienna explained it later, with more tact. The council wanted leaders with demonstrated family commitment, community roots, and authentic connection to pediatric care. Wesley had spent years raising money for children's programs while never acknowledging he had a son who had survived the NICU at the same hospital. Then a major donor couple, Bernard and Elise Whitcomb, pledged $950,000 to expand Bright Harbor's NICU Family Lodging Fund. But they wanted the campaign led by someone with a real family story. Wesley decided Jonah was his missing credential. He first contacted me through email. Subject: Jonah an opportunity. Arden. I hope you are well. I have followed Jonah's growth from a respectful distance and am proud of the young man he is becoming. I would like to discuss an opportunity that could benefit him, Bright Harbor, and many families. I believe it is time we present a united front for his sake. Wesley. I read it 3 times. Followed from a respectful distance. That was a breathtaking phrase for abandonment. I did not answer. The next day, he called. I let it go to voicemail. Arden, it's Wesley. I am trying to handle this maturely. There is a foundation initiative involving Jonah's story, and I do not want you hearing about it from someone else. Call me. Trying to handle this maturely. A man who had left a hospital room to avoid a line on a form was now offering maturity like a gift. I forwarded the voicemail to Sienna and asked if she knew what he meant. She called within 15 minutes. I was hoping he had spoken to you first, she said. He is trying after 9 years. Sienna was quiet. Then she said, he has been nominated for the council chair role tied to the Whitcomb Pledge. His proposal mentions a father-son connection to NICU care. I flagged it because our consent forms list you as sole parent-guardian contact. I closed my eyes. Father-son connection. Yes. Did he use Jonah's name? In a draft, not public, I stopped it from moving forward. My hand tightened around the phone. Thank you. Arden, we need to meet. I want the foundation protected, and I want you and Jonah protected. Agreed. There is a strategy session Friday with the council committee, the donor liaison, Wesley, and legal. I can request you attend as Jonah's parent. I almost said no. Then I looked across the living room at Jonah's school backpack by the door. 1 cent. Wrap patched with duct tape because he insisted it still had good years left. He was upstairs building a train station out of shoeboxes, humming to himself. He did not know that the blank line had started calling again. I will attend, I said. Do you want Wesley told? No, I said. Let him be surprised by a document for once. Before Friday, Wesley came to my apartment, not inside. To the sidewalk outside the small townhouse I had bought with careful savings, overtime, tax refunds, and the kind of discipline that does not photograph well. I saw him through the front window when he stepped from a black SUV. He looked older, better dressed, thinner in the face, still handsome, still carrying himself like rooms owed him cooperation. I opened the door but did not step outside. No, I said. He blinked. I have not said anything yet. You came to my home uninvited. Start with no. His jaw tightened, then relaxed into the practiced expression I remembered from donor events. Arden, I know there is history. There is a birth certificate. He glanced down the street. Can we not do this on the porch? We are not doing it in my house, he exhaled. I want to see Jonah. No. He is my son. There it was. So simple after 9 years. My son. Like a coat taken from storage. I said, your name is not on his birth certificate. His face changed. That can be corrected. Not by pretending it was a typo. I was young, you were 31. I was scared. So was he. He still learned to breathe. That landed. For a second, something real moved through his eyes. Shame, maybe, or the inconvenience of remembering. Then he recovered. This foundation opportunity could help thousands of families. Do you really want your resentment to block that? I almost smiled. There it was, the switch. From apology to moral pressure in under 2 minutes. Bright Harbor can help families without you using Jonah as a costume. His face flushed. That is unfair. No, unfair was a premature baby with a blank father line, because the man in the room cared more about his career than a breathing tube. He lowered his voice. You have told him terrible things about me. I told him the truth gently. You should be grateful for the gently. From upstairs, Jonah called, Mom, who is it? Wesley looked toward the sound like he had been struck. I stepped slightly into the doorway, blocking the line of sight. No one you need to come down for, finish your homework. Jonah said, Okay, Wesley swallowed. He sounds like me. No, I said, he sounds like himself. Wesley's eyes sharpened. I am asking for a meeting, not a war. Then bring documents. I was hoping we could be human. You asked to use my son's name for a $950,000 campaign. We are already in paperwork. He looked at me, then the way he used to when I corrected a bill or questioned a number. A mix of irritation and respect he did not want to feel. Friday, I said, Foundation strategy session, I will be there, do not come back to my house. Then I closed the door. My hands shook afterward, that part matters. Calm is not the absence of shaking. Calm is closing the door anyway. That night, after Jonah went to bed, I took the old discharge folder from the fireproof box in my closet. The folder was faded at the edges now. Inside were 9 years of a story Wesley wanted to enter from the last chapter. The yellow birth certificate worksheet, father information blank. Della's handwritten discharge note. Mother requested father section remain blank after father declined acknowledgement. The hospital visitor log from the NICU obtained years earlier when I needed documentation for the child support case. Wesley Vance, day 6, 14 minutes. Day 19, 22 minutes. No further visits. The text where he said he needed space. Vivian's letter disputing responsibility. The court-ordered paternity results, the support order. The first statement showing $173,680 in billed NICU charges. The adjusted final patient responsibility after insurance, charity care, appeals, and a long payment plan. $28,940. Paid in full over 7 years, by me. I added the new items, Wesley's email, his voicemail transcript. Sienna's note confirming the draft campaign language, had used Jonah's story without my consent. Then I sat on the floor of my closet and cried quietly. Not because I wanted Wesley back. That grief had died years earlier from neglect. I cried because some wounds do not reopen as love. They reopen as insult. 9 years of inhalers, copays, IEP meetings, midnight fevers, therapy appointments, insurance appeals, birthday cakes, school projects, and small triumphs. And Wesley had returned at the exact moment Jonah's survival became professionally useful. That kind of timing is not coincidence, it is char. Actor. Friday's meeting was at the Bright Harbor Administrative Office on the 4th floor of the Northlake Regional Outpatient Building. From the windows, you could see the hospital tower where Jonah had spent his first 57 days. I arrived 10 minutes early in a navy dress, low heels, and my father's old watch. My mother had given it to me after he died. It did not work anymore, but I wore it on days when I needed to remember that men could be gentle without being weak. Sienna met me in the hallway. Are you okay? No, but I am prepared, she nodded. That is often better for meetings. In the conference room were 6 people, Sienna, a foundation attorney named Priya Desai, the donor liaison, Malcolm Reed, 2 council committee members, and Wesley, standing near the window, speaking softly to a woman I recognized from the hospital gala photos as Elise Whitcomb, half of the donor couple behind the $950,000 pledge. Wesley turned when I entered. His expression froze for half a second, then he smiled, Arden. Like he had invited me, Wesley. Elise Whitcomb looked between us. You must be Jonah's mother. I have heard wonderful things. Thank you, he is wonderful. Wesley's smile tightened at the ownership in that sentence. Priya Desai began the meeting with clean professionalism. We are here to review proposed campaign language, consent requirements, and the use of minor patient stories in connection with the Whitcomb Pledge and Council leadership announcement. Wesley sat straighter. I want to say at the outset that my intention has always been to support families. Jonah's story is deeply personal to me. I opened my folder. Sienna glanced at me once. Priya said, Mr. Vance, your draft describes Jonah as your son and refers to your family's NICU journey. Our records do not show you as an authorized parent contact for Jonah Locke. Wesley spread his hands. That is an administrative issue from years ago. Arden and I had a complicated situation, but I have always cared from a distance. A distance. I wrote the phrase down because sometimes you need to preserve absurdity exactly. Elise Whitcomb frowned slightly. What does authorized parent contact mean here? Priya answered. For foundation purposes, the child's legal guardian or authorized parent must consent to the use of name, image, medical history, and story. Arden is the sole consenting parent in our file. Wesley said, that can be updated. I looked at him, not today, he inhaled. Arden, this is bigger than us. It was smaller than you when he was 2 pounds. The room went quiet. Sienna looked down at her pen. Wesley's face flushed. That is exactly the kind of bitterness I was concerned about. Good, I said. Then the meeting can include the concern and the cause. Priya said carefully, Arden, do you have documentation you want included in the record? Yes. I placed the yellow birth certificate worksheet on the table. Not dramatically. Just paper touching wood. This is the birth certificate worksheet completed at Northlake Regional after Jonah was born. Father section blank because Wesley Vance declined to sign the parentage acknowledgement. Wesley looked at the paper like it had grown teeth. That was not that simple. No, I said, it was cruel. Simple came later. I placed Della's note beside it. Nurse discharge note documenting that the father declined acknowledgement and that I requested the father section remain blank rather than list information without consent. Priya picked up the copy. Elise Whitcomb was watching Wesley now, not me. He said I was overwhelmed. The baby was medically fragile. His name is Jonah, I said. You can use it now because you want it on a brochure. Use it in the sentence. Wesley's mouth tightened. Jonah was medically fragile. Yes, and you left. I placed the NICU visitor log next. 57-day stay, Wesley visited twice, total 36 minutes. Malcolm Reed shifted in his chair. One of the committee members looked away. Wesley said, my presence would have caused conflict. Your absence caused clarity, then the text. I need space, do not contact my office. My mother will coordinate anything necessary, then Vivian's letter. Then the paternity order. Then the payment record showing 7 years of hospital balance payments. I did not raise my voice through any of it. I did not call him names. I let each document introduce him. Finally, I placed his new email on top. I have followed Jonah's growth from a respectful distance. Elise Whitcomb read it, then looked up. Mr. Vance, were you involved in the child's life? Wesley straightened. There were legal and interpersonal barriers. Priya asked, did you seek visitation? He paused, not formally. Did you request foundation consent before including Jonah's name in draft campaign language? I assumed. I smiled then, not happily. As Sumption had finally entered the room, Priya waited. Wesley said, I assumed Arden would understand the benefit. I said, you assumed I would still do the useful thing after you did the useless one. That landed harder than I expected. Wesley's hands folded on the table. For a moment, he looked less like a development officer and more like the man who had stood in my hospital room and seen only cost. Elise Whitcomb closed her folder. I need a minute, she said. Sienna offered to step out with her. Priya paused the meeting. Wesley turned to me as soon as the door closed. Are you trying to destroy me? There it was, not Jonah, not the foundation, me. No, I said, I am refusing to let you borrow what you abandoned. I was scared. So was I signed anyway. Hospital forms, billing appeals, oxygen deliveries, therapy consents, emergency contacts, school forms, inhaler authorizations. Every line you left blank became a line I had to fill. His eyes shone. Whether from shame or anger, I could not tell. I have regretted it. Privately, he looked confused. What? You regretted it privately. Paid nothing privately does not refill public absence. You let the world believe you were childless because it was cleaner. Now the world likes Jonah, and suddenly you have a son. He rubbed his face. I can amend the birth certificate. I can pay. I can set up a trust. Jonah is not a rebrand. I know that, do you? He had no clean answer. Sienna and Elise returned. Elise's face had changed, not cold exactly, clear. She sat down and looked at Wesley. My husband and I pledged this money for families staying near the NICU, not for image repair. Wesley's face went pale. Elise, I hope you understand. I understand more than I did 20 minutes ago. The pledge remains with Bright Harbor. The leadership connection does not. The sentence was quiet. It ended more than his campaign. Sienna said, Bright Harbor will remove Jonah's name from any draft connected to council leadership. Arden, Jonah's existing ambassador role remains only under your approved consent. No new use will proceed without your review. I nodded. Priya turned to Wesley. Mr. Vance, if you wish to pursue legal parentage updates or contact, that is outside this foundation meeting and should go through appropriate family court channels. The foundation will not mediate personal access. Wesley looked at me. For the first time that day, he did not perform. He just looked tired. Can I at least write to him? I thought about Jonah upstairs with shoebox trains. Jonah who asked thoughtful questions. Jonah who deserved truth but not adult mess dumped into his lap because a man wanted relief from shame. You can write a letter, I said. You will send it to me first. It will contain no campaign, no pressure, no promises you are not prepared to keep, and no sentence that makes him responsible for forgiving you. He nodded slowly. Okay. I picked up the birth certificate worksheet. He watched it like it was alive. Arden, he said. I paused. I want to fix the blank line. I looked at him then. 9 years collapsed for 1 second. Hospital bed, yellow paper, incubator, Vivian's pearls, his coat leaving the room. You left that line blank, I said. I left it honest. No one spoke. Not because the line was clever. Because it was true. The meeting ended without Jonah's name in Wesley's campaign. The Whitcomb pledge stayed with Bright Harbor and eventually funded 12 family lodging rooms, a transport voucher program, and a billing advocate position for NICU parents who did not speak paperwork fluently. Sienna asked me if the advocate position could be named after Jonah. I asked Jonah. He said, will it help parents not be scared of mail? Yes. Then okay, but not my whole name, just Jonah's desk, like a helper desk. That is what they called it, Jonah's desk. Not Vance Family Fund. Not Wesley's comeback story, Jonah's desk. A place where parents could bring terrifying envelopes and learn what they meant. Wesley did write a letter. It arrived 2 weeks later, through Priya's office because I insisted on that boundary. I read it alone first. Jonah. My name is Wesley Vance. I am your biological father. When you were born, I was afraid and selfish. I left your mother to do hard things alone. That was wrong. None of it was your fault. You do not owe me a relationship. If someday you want to ask me questions, I will answer them honestly. If you do not, I will respect that. I am sorry I was not there, Wesley. It was not perfect. It was the first thing from him that did not ask for anything. I showed it to Dr. Klein, Jonah's child therapist, before I showed Jonah. She helped me decide how to present it gently. Then, on a Saturday after pancakes, I sat with Jonah at the kitchen table and said his biological father had sent a letter. Jonah read it twice. His face did not do what I expected. He did not CR. Why he did not smile, he looked careful. He wrote biological father, he said. Yes. That means he knows he is not my dad. I swallowed. It means he knows he was not here. Jonah tapped the paper. Can I think about it? As long as you need. Do you hate him? I looked at my son. Brilliant, gentle, carrying questions no child should have to carry, but asking them anyway. No, I said, I do not trust him, those are different. He nodded. Good, hate seems tiring. It is. He folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Can we put it in the file? I smiled a little. Which file? The one with my baby papers. He knew about the file in a child-appropriate way. He knew there were records from when he was born. He knew I kept documents because documents helped families remember the truth. Yes, I said, we can put it there. He stood, then turned back. Mom, yes. The blank line does not mean I am blank, right? That question moved through me like a blade and a prayer. I pulled him into my arms carefully because he was 9 and already pretending not to need it. No, baby, the blank line was about him, not you, you were never blank. He let me hold him for 3 full breaths. Then he said, muffled against my shirt, okay, can I build trains now? Children are merciful like that. Wesley did not become a father overnight. This is not a story where one boardroom embarrassment turns a selfish man into a hero. He started with letters, slow ones, supervised by boundaries, no gifts at first, no surprise visits, no school pickups, no showing up at events with photographers. He met with a therapist who specialized in reunification. He paid the child support arrears that had accumulated during his early late payment years. He reimbursed the remaining medical payment plan amount I had already paid, not as a gift, but as restitution. I accepted the money and put it in Jonah's education account. Vivian Vance sent a note too. It was less successful, Arden. I regret the pain surrounding Jonah's birth. It was a frightening time for everyone. Families make difficult choices under pressure. Vivian. I sent it back. Not dramatically. No speech. Just returned in a larger envelope with a copy of her old letter disputing responsibility clipped to it. Under her signature, I wrote one sentence. Pressure did not write this, you did. She did not reply, that was fine. Not every person needs a redemption arc. Some people are useful as warnings. Wesley eventually met Jonah in person 8 months after the foundation meeting, in Dr. Klein's office, with me in the waiting room and every boundary written down. Jonah wore his dinosaur hoodie and carried a notebook of questions. The first question was, why did you leave? Wesley later told me he had practiced many answers and abandoned all of them when Jonah looked at him. He said, because I was selfish and scared, and I cared more about what your birth would cost me than what leaving would cost you. Jonah asked, do you still do that? Wesley said, I am trying not to. Jonah said, trying is not the same as doing. That was my boy. Afterward, Jonah came out quiet but not broken. He answered, he said, how do you feel? Like I have more information. I almost laughed because he sounded exactly like me and exactly like himself. Information can be a good start, I said. It's not a dad. No, it is not. He reached for my hand in the parking lot. I held it. For all the blanks, all the forms, all the rooms Wesley had missed, Jonah's hand in mine was the line that had never been empty. The birth certificate stayed, unchanged for another year. People had opinions about that. They always do. Some said I should let Wesley be added if he was trying. Some said Jonah deserved his father's name. Some said a blank line looked sad. Those people had not sat beside the incubator. They had not watched a man turn a baby into a liability. They had not paid $28,940 in monthly pieces while he built a career in children's philanthropy. They had not watched the same man return when the child's story came with donors. A blank line can look sad to someone who never needed it to tell the truth. To me, it looked like a boundary. Eventually, when Jonah was 11, he asked if Wesley's name could be added someday. Not because Wesley wanted it, because Jonah was old enough to understand documents and wanted his record to show biology without rewriting history. We did it carefully, through court, with Jonah's therapist involved, with Wesley paying legal fees, with an amended record that did not erase the original. The original stayed in our file because the original was true at the time. When the amended certificate arrived, Jonah looked at it, then at the yellow worksheet from the hospital. "Can we keep both?" "Yes." "This one shows who he became," he said, touching the new certificate. Then he touched the old one. "This one shows who you were." I had to sit down. Because sometimes children understand the archive better than adults. Wesley never became the father he would have been if he had signed that day. You cannot go back and hold a 2-pound baby after he has learned to run. You cannot attend the first therapy appointment 9 years late. You cannot hear the first laugh again, or carry the oxygen tank, or sit beside a feverish crib and call that history optional. But he became something more honest than he had been, a secondary parent. A man with limits. A man trying to earn small trust without demanding a large stage. That is not a fairy tale. It is better than a lie. Jonah is 13 now. He still has asthma, but he runs cross-country slowly and stubbornly. He volunteers once a month at Jonah's desk, sorting crayons and snack bags for siblings of NICU babies. He likes science, train maps, and making adults answer the actual question. He has Wesley's eyebrows, my father's patience, my mother's stubbornness, and a kindness that belongs entirely to him. Sometimes people at foundation events still call him a miracle kid. He says, "I prefer former tiny person." That is also my boy. As for me, I still keep the folder, the yellow worksheet. The old visitor log, the NICU bills, the paternity order, Wesley's first letter, the amended certificate. Not because I live in the past. Because the past has a habit of being rewritten by people who arrive late with better clothes. Records are not revenge. Records are memory with a spine. My husband refused to sign our newborn son's birth certificate because he thought our baby would ruin everything. 9 years later, he begged for my son's name because that same boy had become proof of everything good. And when he asked me to fill the blank for his benefit, I finally understood what Della had meant in that hospital room. Some blanks are not accidents. Some blanks are testimony. That is my story. If someone walked out when things got hard and came back when your strength became useful, tell me what you would have done. Would you have let him use the name, made him earn it, or kept the blank line exactly where he left it? Share this with someone who needs permission to protect the truth even when someone calls it bitterness. Before you go, tell me your name and the city you are watching from. I want to know where this story found you. I will see you in the next one.